Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So today's video we'll be talking about this very dangerous blizzard that is occurring right now across the upper Midwest and is ongoing and will continue to do so for most of the evening into the night. We also have a threat for severe weather, lots of rain, and the second phase of the system across the Ohio Valley into portions of maybe even the Mid-Atlantic and towards the south. So this is a very large system and we have a ton of stuff to go over. But if you guys at any point in this video like what you're seeing, check out my other videos, consider subscribing, and if you are a returning viewer or just enjoy the content, consider liking the video as that is really helpful. Otherwise, let's start talking about this. So notice right now we have the radar pulled up. This is my local radar. If you from the Chicago area may recognize this. WGN in my opinion. They have a very easy to use and relatively easy to read radar, right? And let's take this back. So this radar goes all the way back to 11 o'clock in the morning Central Standard Time, so 12 in the east, 10 across the mountains, and 9 across the Pacific coast. Now notice that Minneapolis was initially raining, right? That was forecasted, and then transitioned over to snow. There was quite a bit of snow across these locations, especially into Wyoming. If you were to look at the snowfall reports, there were some pretty heavy amounts. Again, this wasn't a historic event by itself or even historic, I should say this wasn't even a powerful event by itself in terms of the snowfall amounts. The snowfall amounts were there, right? 5, 6 inches, so there was snow, right? But the wind just made it much worse, and that's why they have blizzard warnings issued for much of this location, or these areas right into the Dakotas, 4 or 5 inches, and then here's where the heaviest will fall into Minneapolis. 4 inches fell since 11 o'clock, and that makes sense as that's when it started to transition. You could see especially the northern suburbs and north and west transition a bit earlier across that snow, and then notice that continued to occur, right? We did start seeing that powerful cold front starting to develop. This was some really shower activity that really hasn't amounted to much since. I apologize, the phone is ringing. So while I was waiting for that phone to finish its call, I just reminded myself to remind you guys that if you have any comments or concerns, put them down in the comments down below. I will try my best to answer them or just to hear you out. So obviously I always encourage that. By the way, so going back to what we were talking about, notice that we have, again, that very long area of snow, right? I mean, that's the best way to word it. It's extending from southern Ontario all the way into portions of northern Kansas. Probably, if I were to measure this, maybe 1,000 plus miles in length. And then notice, again, the showery activity is going on already for most of the day, right? But really, the powerful cold front is this one right here. These two will kind of do a dance and pretty much merge together, if you will. Now, notice that Chicago will see some rain. Again, it's really hard to see whether or not this will transition over to snow. Not for Chicago, but maybe even Indiana and eastern or western Kentucky. Because if you were to take a look at the models, some models take this system as like the GFS. This is the rainfall from the system, by the way. Just look at that. Sorry, this is way too far out. This is the rainfall from the system. Look at that. That is still very heavy amounts, especially since these locations have, a very heavy snowpack from that one big system they've seen earlier on. So that is definitely a flooding concern. There are flood watches already issued, and that is rightfully so. But notice that the GFS is one of these few models that basically makes this system gives it a snow band pretty early on, maybe even to portions of Illinois, Indiana. It's not really supported by many models, but look, it brings snow into Tennessee, Kentucky. While I don't know if that will be enough for a white Christmas, an inch or more of snow, this cold front does end up becoming very strong, very sturdy, and then it starts going into its second phase, and that's when the heavy snow aspect, the very heavy snow may be falling. So there was already, there will be heavy snow across Minnesota and Arrowhead of Minnesota and northwestern Wisconsin and into Iowa. Really lighter amounts as you go further south. But again, it looks as if the heavier amounts will be here. This is a fluffy snow as it's very cold. It was wet initially, but now Minneapolis has, it's pretty chilly temperatures right now, and the snow is falling dry. It is getting whipped around by that wind. Those winds are absolutely incredibly strong. 40 to 50, if not 60 miles per hour in some locations. So if you were to look at the National Weather Service map, it's just blizzard warnings all over the location of the upper Midwest, all over the area. And notice that Minneapolis, again, under that Duluth, into Grand Forks, they did get some snow earlier, Fargo as well. But notice, this pulls away, this one weakens. It does bring in that very, very cold air, but again, this is when it starts transitioning. And now, if you live across southern Indiana, western Kentucky, western Tennessee, maybe northern Alabama and Georgia, how far south and early on this snow starts transitioning is kind of the big question, because the reason for it being kind of complex is because the cold air needs to catch up to this precipitation. But the precipitation won't be waiting there. It will be hard to get. This precipitation will be running away pretty quickly, if not, as fast as this cold air. Whether or not this catches up and transitions that snow is a bit uncertain. And if it doesn't, obviously that won't produce any snow. And if it does, even if there's a thin band of, say, 70 miles or more of this snowfall, it will be pretty moderate to heavy snowfall. It will be wet and heavy, but it could leave an inch or two, leave down an inch or two of snow pretty quickly. Notice Detroit, southern central Michigan. Again, possibly seeing that snow. We'll have to see. Not all models are like the GFS. Notice Kentucky, Tennessee, the Appalachians, and here's where it starts taking that turn. Notice the GFS brings it pretty far into western or pretty far into central Pennsylvania. Doesn't really bring much for, say, Columbus or Cincinnati. It does with that burst of snow, but not much from this second phase. And then notice it does bring a bit of a third phase, if you will, across Atlantic Canada. So we'll have to see. By the way, this blizzard up here, while it is going to start weakening, right, in terms of the winds and really the snowfall, it will continue plowing into southern Canada. The southern Canadian prairies will be seeing quite a bit of snow. They have already picked up a lot across Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and they will continue into portions of Ontario. I know that there have been already some pretty heavy snowfall reports out of Canada, and notice that that will continue, and the snow will be very powdery, very blustery, and blowing sideways. Now, let's take a look at the total snowfall if we take it through all, even that third phase of the system, which some models are starting to show as well. This thing is a long-lived event, and three phases, three separate phases. Look at that, one right here, and one right there. So this one is already going on. Obviously, probably Minneapolis, if you're over 6 inches, you could see another 6 inches, so possibly up to a foot of snow. And if you recall, the amounts across Minneapolis really went up quickly. And I was saying a couple days ago that could be the case, and that that ended up being truthful. And that's not always how it happens, but this time around it was. And notice Chicago right here, no real white Christmas for you, it seems, according to the GFS. Indy, unfortunately. Now, there will be a lot of lake effect by Michigan. I think the GFS underestimates this pretty significantly. There could be some amounts approaching 5 to 8 inches, even pretty far inland. This lake effect setup won't be the best for heavy, 30 plus inch amounts, but it will be pretty widespread. Notice Iowa as well, Dakota, Nebraska, maybe 1 to 2 inches, but again, this will be blustery, wind-driven, making travel very difficult. Into Canada, Ontario, 10 inches, so in terms of centimeters, that is around 25 centimeters, exact 10, because I think it's 2.5 inches, or 2.5 centimeters is 1 inch. Notice the GFS does not show a lot of snow in general for Pennsylvania. I mean, it's still going to be, 4 to 6 inches, but there are some models that show substantially more. It does bring a bit of snow to Kentucky, Tennessee. That would be an inch or more of snow, so white Christmas. Whether or not these locations get that snow here is tough to tell. Whether or not Indianapolis, Lexington see that snow transition. Again, it all determines how slow that precip is and how fast that cold air is. Now, let's get rid of this pen and let's move on into other models. Say the Canadian. I'll just show you the total snowfall. We see some differences. What we see is generally the same here. This was a bit of an older model run, so it shows a bit more across South Dakota. Again, most of that has fallen at this point. This, though, hasn't, and, well, maybe a bit, but it's showing generally the same as the GFS. The big difference is more for the lake effect, which I think is more realistic from the Canadian, and quite a bit more across the Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia area, and Kentucky. This may be the largest snowstorm, say, Kentucky and West Virginia has seen in a good while. Charleston seeing potentially up to a foot of snow, portions of eastern Kentucky, even central Kentucky, same with Tennessee. Notice it does show a bit of snow into Alabama and Georgia, which is interesting. That may be possible and is not out of the question. As weird as it sounds, Chicago not seeing the white Christmas, but maybe northern Georgia will. That's unfortunately how sometimes it is. Unfortunately or fortunately, depends on where you live, right? And notice by the lakes, Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, there could be some widespread 1 foot, if not possibly approaching 2 feet in some locations of that lake effect area. Now, let's take a look at more models. So this was the Canadian. I showed you the GFS. Let's take a look at the European model, the last global model I want to look at. So this was the most recent update model run right here, and let's take a glance at this. So notice we have that cold front starting to transition over with a bit of snow. Again, the ongoing wicked blizzard across the upper Midwest, right into portions of Canada. And notice that this rain, cold front, if you will, and initially mostly rain, it does start transitioning again. Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia are seeing quite a bit of snow. Again, the European, like the GFS, kind of takes it pretty far into Pennsylvania. Not all models agree with that, especially the high resolution models. And then it takes it out further out into Canada, and that could be the third wave of that system. So this system has been long-lived, and it still will be here for a few more days across the U.S. and then eventually into Canada. So taking a look at this, 102 hours. Let's take a glance at this. Notice a lot of amounts over 6-7 inches, right? But I think that the Cuchero would be more accurate. Unfortunately, the European doesn't have that ability to, or this model on this website doesn't have that. But I think that, again, a lot of these amounts are going to be accurate. Even if this is older information, this is what the Cuchero shows higher amounts. So I would say 7-8 inches is a good amount still yet to come across, maybe even Minneapolis. So if you have 5 inches, as some reports showed, you could be looking at maybe up to a foot overall. And of course, that their drift will be huge, as that wind will be wicked, right? Notice the lake effect, it shows 2 inches. Again, it will be more significant than that. The global models have a tough time always predicting lake effect. Notice Toronto, for example, seeing maybe up to half a foot. Again, I think this will be a bit more, as this is just assuming a 10-to-1 ratio. But notice into Tennessee, a bit into Georgia. If not, if there's no accumulations, there probably will be some snow showers. So that's still nice to see. Notice northeast, pretty much nothing, but as we push into Canada, right here, we do see some snow, maybe in fact some heavier snow. Whether or not that maybe pushes into larger cities like Quebec is a bit unknown. I don't think it will, but we'll just have to wait and see as of now. Let's take a glance back at the Canadian. I already showed you these amounts, if you recall, on this website, right? But I want to take a glance at the Cuchera, as I think that will be more accurate. And notice that it still shows an additional, again, some of this has already fallen. I would say 8 to 7 inches, but look at the increase right here. Quite a bit more. West Virginia, Charleston, maybe a foot. Kentucky, up to a foot. I mean, that's a historic potential snowstorm across Kentucky. Notice into northern Georgia, Alabama, an inch, 2 inches, maybe even 3 inches, 5 inches right there across the elevated areas. Ohio, Columbus, seeing a bit of snow. Cincinnati on that cusp of seeing, 1 to 2, maybe 3. The lakes, you can see here, the Canadian shows up to 2 feet, which may be a bit overdone. Toronto, maybe up to a foot, and obviously into much of Ontario and Quebec right there. Lake effect, again, 6-7 inches, I think that is more likely, right? Let's take a look at some of the high-resolution models like the NAM. This model is relatively widespread used. It's been doing a relatively good job these past few snowstorms. Notice, this is what it shows additional across Minneapolis, and this is from 18Z. So it shows from right around 4 o'clock in the afternoon Central Standard Time, and I'm recording this 5 o'clock. An additional foot, so that would put a lot of locations well over a foot, obviously, if they've already seen 6 inches. This may be a bit overdone, but again, with such cold air, the ratios of snow will be falling heavily, or they will be very high. So an inch of rain would be, if it's a 20-to-1 ratio, would be 20 inches instead of 10 inches, which this one assumes. So now notice that across Michigan, we do see that lake effect. Again, a relatively good job the NAM shows. I think 4 to 8 inches is possible. It does show lighter amounts across the West Virginia, Ohio area, and again, shifts it a bit further towards the west and a sharp cutoff. Whether or not that holds true, or we get a 1 to 2 inch event further, maybe into portions of Indiana, Kentucky, and as the Canadian showed, maybe into northern Georgia and Alabama, is tough to tell. Again, it's really a tough scenario, and I'll show you one model in a minute that disagrees with the NAM that is also a high res. Toronto, though, again, 5, 6, 7 inches, and as we push into Canada, that third wave potentially, maybe even affecting portions of Maine and into Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and into Quebec right there. Very heavy amounts, probably the heaviest around southern Canada. Taking a look at the HER model, sorry, the RDPS. This is the model that is high res, right, comparable to the NAM, but it shows a different story. So generally high amounts here as well. Again, these amounts, by the way, there was, I think, the 21st, I was looking across Minneapolis and how much snow they were expecting. They were expecting 2 inches. And then yesterday in the evening, they were forecasted almost a foot. So within a day, it jumped 12 inches. And again, it could go even higher than that. Michigan, look at that. That lake effect will be pretty powerful. That could extend into portions of central Michigan. You can see that that's what this model is hinting at, some wraparound. This model is one of the models that takes the system further towards the west into portions of Columbus, maybe Cincinnati getting towards that heavier amounts of snow, or just, snow in general, because the NAM, as you saw, showed nothing here. The RDPS model shows 1 to 2 inches. Tennessee, 4, 5, 6 inches. Maybe that extending into portions of extreme northern Alabama, northeastern Alabama, and northern Georgia. West Virginia, again, look at that. The lakes, possibly up to a foot of snow. Cleveland, Erie, and into Toronto. The larger cities, like Montreal, Ottawa, Quebec up here, really missing out, maybe an inch or two, but no heavy event, it seems. But again, this system's been all over the place. There have been dramatic changes relatively not far out. And let me just show you what this one model shows, because this may be a possible scenario, and it could drop much more snow than forecasted. Notice that we have that cold front, right, that blizzard wicked system. We start seeing that transition over to snow across portions of central Tennessee, central Kentucky, not just eastern Kentucky, and then Ohio, Columbus, Cincinnati, Cleveland, and this thing starts taking a turn up towards the north pretty early on, unlike the NAM, which slides it just towards a little bit towards the east. And again, it's just these little differences at this point. It won't most likely, go completely towards the east or completely towards the west. Most likely not. But it's these large cities like Columbus, maybe Lexington, Detroit, that could be on the verge of seeing 1 to 3 inches versus nothing. And then notice this thing tracks up to the north, right? Very, very heavy rain, lake effect going ham across Lake Michigan. And then, again, potentially that third wave of that system across eastern Canada into Atlantic Canada. And then the pattern moderates with lake effect off of Erie and Ontario as the winds go more west, or west to east rather than northwest to southeast. Now, taking a glance at another model I want to take a look at is the HER. So this is the HRR, right? A very high-res model. It's very short range, but it's supposedly supposed to be very accurate, and honestly, that usually is true. Notice it does a very good job with that cold front placement, similar to what we have on a radar right now across the United States. And again, as we continue tracking this, we see that the blizzard pulls away. We start seeing some mixing into maybe Indy, but quickly, regardless of not that happens, this system, this cold front beefens up, a lot of precip, lots of rain. Again, this HER model reluctant to show any snow into these locations, and once that occurs, once that passes central Kentucky, it barely even touches eastern Kentucky, but finally it starts doing its northward turn, which affects eastern Kentucky and eastern Tennessee. Still, the HER model is very reluctant to bring it into central Kentucky or central Tennessee. But notice what it points out are these showers, these snow showers, and that seems to be the trend across ongoing already across Kansas. See right there? So while that may not bring an inch or two of snow, it could bring a little dusting of Christmas, still making it rather pleasant. So that's something nice to watch for. But pleasant is kind of subjective, as if that occurs, the wind is still strong that could blow around that snow. Notice though, Cleveland, Erie, even Pittsburgh getting on some of that very heavy snow into western New York. Rochester kind of on the rain snow line again, but looking more rain as of now, but it's still yet to be watched. And notice, I do want to say the lake effect right there is falling pretty heavily across Lake Michigan. Off of Lake Michigan onto Michigan and northwest Indiana. Again, these snow bands aren't the most effective. The heaviest events occur when these snow bands are oriented north to south. This time they're west to east, so they have shorter amount of water to come off of, so they're weaker, but there's more of them, and it will be a rather long duration event, so that could lead to some pretty heavy amounts. This takes us through around midday Christmas, and again, notice snow showers maybe into northern Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina. Shower activity, no real accumulating snowfall, but again, if you get under one of those showers, you could still get a bit of that surprising snow. And this is what the snow it shows. Look at that. Very heavy snow across the UP as well. There's just so many states to cover that, I sometimes, if I focus on one, then I do that. But again, I do want to mention that these lake effect, there could be lake effect enhancement here as well. And notice it shows well over a foot additionally, possibly across Minneapolis. And notice that, again, quite a bit of snow across Michigan. It shows some amounts over a foot of snow. And into Ohio, Pennsylvania, into upstate New York, showing a bit of snow. Again, rather conservative with these amounts right here, compared to some models which show a decent amount more. The NAM 3 KEM, this is related to the earlier NAM I showed you. Just more high res, but generally, the same setup. Columbus kind of on that line, Cleveland more on that line. But again, I think it may just be a bit further towards the west than what these models are showing, as that has been more of consistent with other models. Taking a quick look at the National Weather Service map. I know this video is already pretty long, but notice we have flash flood watches all across these locations where we had a lot of snow, and if it melted, then the grounds are wet. More rain, right? High wind warnings. We have winter storm warnings across eastern Kentucky, Ohio, and into Pennsylvania. Again, this may change drastically. As you recall, 2 days before today, so 2 days ago, Minneapolis was forecasted 2 inches. Now they're expected to see, if you take a look at them, they have already 5 inches of snow that fell, and they could see again 4 to 8, 3 to 7 more. So again, quite a drastic change, to say the least. Now I'm taking a look at portions of these locations right here: Grand Rapids, Western Michigan. There could be, again, decent amounts of lake effect, 2 to 3 to 2, so that's a total of 7 inches, and that may be the trend all across the lake shore. And then across, Indiana, Kentucky, Lexington, or even Cincinnati, that's the tough call. Wilmington, Ohio, whether or not they see snow. Again, they have this forecast, official forecast, but this may shift either way. So, and they say stay up to date, as this may change, especially after what they saw happen in Minneapolis. So again, this is what's going on right now. Stay safe, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you learned something new. And thank you so much for watching. Again, if you have anything you want to leave behind in the comments, feel free to do so. Thank you for watching. See ya.